The 2012 FIA GT1 World Championship would see 9 brands compete over 9 events through the course of the year. The opening round of the season would take place at Nogaro, the classic French circuit, a great venue to begin the season. And it was Audi driver Stefano Telli that would start the first championship race from pole position.
For us to be here in the World Championship is really, really important. I think we have a really strong air-raid car, and we've been winning races last year, but not at this level. I think we are strong, and we're going to fight to the maximum for sure.
Alongside Ortelli on the front row would be his teammate Frank Stippler as the lights went green. Marcus Winkelhock got a good initial getaway, but it was eventually blocked out with the AF Corsa Ferrari of Tony Villander attempting to go around the outside of the Mercedes. But the two Audis held their 1-2 position into the first sequence of corners, with up into third place Tony Villander. It was also a cracking start from the number 1 McLaren of Fred Makovicky. He made up a few places, and also Mike Parisi challenging Gregoire de Moustier, pushing the McLaren out onto the grass. But that would only be the start of the McLaren's troubles. The number 1 Hexis machine coming into the pits very early on in the race to retire with more mechanical problems. A quick look into the engine suggested that it was all over for the Hexis McLaren team in their first race weekend with the MP412C. Nicky Pastorelli was now challenging Enzo Ede. Ede had already lost out to the other Alincourt Mercedes going down into the first corner. Basseng showed his nose towards the inside line. Ede, too busy looking in his mirrors, overshot the braking for turn 1, allowing Basseng to get through and into the top 3. There were more problems for Hexis McLaren. Gregoire de Moustier slowing down towards the end of the first stint, marking a miserable first weekend for the Hexis team. He got passed by a number of cars and eventually had to pull into the pits to retire. At the pit stop window, the second place Audi came in first. Frank Stippler handing over to Oliver Jarvis. They had a slightly better stop than their teammates, whilst the Alincourt squad had a very good stop as well. They would be ones to watch out for this season as far as the pit stop windows were concerned. Out of the pits went the 33 Audi to move into the lead. Oliver Jarvis coming out ahead of Laurens Vanthoor, who'd taken over in the original race-leading Audi. Vanthoor, though, would soon begin to put his teammate under considerable pressure. Jarvis was struggling to get his tyres up to temperature. Vanthoor tried to get around the outside into turn 4, but there wasn't enough room there. The two teammates battling each other for the race lead. Vanthoor got a great run out of turn 6, and on the run down into the hairpin managed to line up the move. It looked as though Vanthoor was too far behind coming into the braking zone, but the Belgian was feeling confident, moving to the inside and sending it up the inside of Ollie Jarvis. Vanthoor, though, outbroke himself, allowing Jarvis to regain the lead. There were battles further back in the order. The struggling BMWs were on the charge. Jelmer Berman making his way past Thomas Enger, going down into the final chicane, and Berman would then have the Valmont Racing Team Russia car of Alexei Vasiliev to try and get past in the next few laps. Enger, though, wasn't having any of it. He sent it back up the inside into turn 1 to mark a great battle over what was 10th position. Then the move was made for the lead. Vanthoor pulling the same manoeuvre, this time getting the car stopped in time, and he took the lead away from Oliver Jarvis. Jarvis couldn't keep the pace of his teammate, and Vanthoor slowly began to pull away at the front, ensuring that it was he and Stefano Telli who took the first victory in the 2012 FIA GT1 World Championship season. It was a 1-2 for the Belgian Audi club, much delight for them, with Marc Basseng and Marcus Winkelhock coming across the line in third position. So here's a look at the results. It was 3.7 seconds the winning margin in the end for Laurens Vanthoor. Mercedes-Benz finishing third and fourth after they thought they were going to have a difficult weekend.
It's incredible. I don't have any words. I don't know if my father's watching. It's his birthday. I think this is quite a good present. It's just perfect job by all the team. The car was great. Stefan did a wonderful job. I don't have any more words.
Basseng and Winkelhock picked up their trophies on the podium, but the opening weekend was all about the Belgian Audi club. The WRT squad doing a great job with their R8 LMSs to move to the top of the drivers and the team's championship. Laurens Vanthoor and Stefano Telli marking a brilliant debut weekend for WRT. And they took the lead as the series headed to Belgium. trademark unpredictable Belgian weather greeted the series for the second round of the season at Zolder. Saturday's qualifying race had been a very rainy affair, which had ultimately been won by Michael Bartels and Jelmer Berman. Bartels would start on pole position. Alongside him, the 37 Alinco.com Munich Motorsports machine of Thomas Jaeger. A brief downpour before the race meant that most of the field started on wet weather tyres. When the race got underway, it was a very impressive start from Maxime Martin in the Aston Martin on the inside line. The two front row men went side by side into the first corner, but Michael Bartels was just about able to hold on the inside line and move up into the lead of the race. In third position was the 38 car of Marcus Winkelhock. He decided to start the race on slick tyres. Tony Verlander was on a charge in his AF Corsa Ferrari, first of all getting past the Vita for One racing team BMW of Nicky Melnhoff, then the Lamborghini in between him and the McLaren, and then before too long challenging Grégoire de Moustier into turn 4. It really was an impressive performance from Verlander after the Ferraris had struggled in the qualifying race. Another man on a charge was Maxime Martin in the number 7 Aston Martin. He'd already made his way up into 4th position and was challenging Michael Bartels to try and move up into the top 3, whilst the two Alinco Munich Motorsports Mercedes battled among themselves out front. Winkelhock's decision to start on slicks looked as though it had paid off, but when the rain started coming down, he had to dive into the pit lane. Meanwhile, Matt Halliday was forcing his way past Michael Bartels, getting a great run out of the final corner in the Porsche to pull alongside and pass the BMW down the straight and start to close in on Maxime Martin in front of him. Winkelhock was in to change onto wet weather tyres, whilst his teammate was coming under increasing pressure from Maxime Martin. Martin looked to the inside of Pastorelli coming down into the chicane, but the superior traction of the Aston Martin pulled him alongside and he managed to hold it on all the way around the outside at turn 7 to move up into the lead of the race. It really was a very impressive performance from Maxime Martin, who had left the first round in Nogaro with no points. Pastorelli was then under attack from Matt Halliday. Again, the Porsche getting great traction out of the final chicane and managing to pull alongside the Mercedes going down towards the first corner. The straight line speed of the Porsche was really something to behold, and there was nothing Nicky Pastorelli could do despite a spirited defence into the first corner. Parisi was happy, but Halliday ran wide, allowing Pastorelli back through into second position. Parisi less impressed. But this was the key moment in the race. The Porsche coming in very early to change onto slick tyres. That meant that when it left the pit lane, it would have a couple of laps advantage to get its slicks up to temperature. In for the second time came Marcus Winkelhock, this time to hand over to Marc Basseng. They were well out of contention now after their initial pit stop. And here you can see just the advantage that the slick tyres gave Mike Parisi. Coming out of the final corner, he managed to get past both Thomas Jaeger and Steph Dusseldorp in one swoop, and he moved up into a race lead challenging position, but there were still pit stops to be sorted out. The Aston Martin that was leading the race had now been taken over by Alexei Vasiliev, and Mike Parisi soon breezed past the Aston, going down into the final chicane. A spin for Thomas Jaeger put him out of contention for the race victory. Unfortunately for the Alinco squad, they wouldn't be on the podium this weekend. Into the pits then came the number 3 Ferrari, Tony Verlander handing over to Philippe Salaquada as both of the WRT Audis came in at the same time. Number 8 Porsche leaving the pits, but it was the number 9 Porsche that was really on it. It managed to leapfrog both of the Audis at the pit stop, with Mike Parisi now moving up into a net second position. And here was the move for the lead. Salaquada was unable to get the heat into the slicks on the Ferrari, and Mike Parisi easily outbroke him going down into turn 9. Salaquada really struggling to keep the back end of the Ferrari in check. Salaquada's struggles continued because he was soon under pressure from Jelmer Berman for second position. Berman got the better traction out of the chicane and managed to move up the inside into turn 8. The Audis had had a great weekend in Nogaro. It wasn't quite working out for them here. Stefano Telli knocking Oliver Jarvis into a spin. Jarvis recovering, but he would finish way down in 10th place. It was the race win though for Mike Parisi and Matt Halliday. The ex-Inbank Team Porsche squad and the Mullner Motorsports team absolutely delighted to take the race victory. 1 second clear in the end of Jelmer Berman, who stormed through the pack in his BMW, with Tony Verlander and Philippe Salaquada in third place.
Yes, it was incredible. There is a lot of pressure during the race. The conditions were very, very difficult. I want to thank Bernard Müller for his strategy. It was very fantastic. The car was good. At the end it was very difficult because I didn't have tires, so I think with my teammate we are a very good team, and with the team Exim Bank, Porsche, thank you everybody. It's one of my best day in my life, so I am very happy.
After picking up only 1 point at Nogaro, a second place for Hjalmar Berman and Michael Bartels meant that they began their championship challenge. But it was the top step of the podium for Mike Parisi and Matt Halliday, the New Zealander and Frenchman, climbing onto the top step and also climbing up into second position in the championship. Laurence Vanthor and Stéphane Ortelli still hold on to the lead of the championship though, despite only finishing in 6th place as the series moves to Spain. The third round of the championship saw the action take place at the Navarra circuit in Spain, where finally the McLarens would begin to show their true pace. Before the race weekend got underway, we spoke to Alvaro Parent.
I'm really looking forward for this weekend. Hopefully we'll have a dry weekend all the time, just for us to see how the car and the setup and the work we've been doing on the car is going to be useful to us on the track, and see how our pace is and how competitive we are.
It was a McLaren 1-2 as the lights went out, with Fred Macavicki and Grégoire de Moustier starting the MP4 12Cs off the front row of the grid. Marc Basseng had made a brilliant start. This was the view back from his Mercedes, but into the first corner it was the McLaren 1-2 still. Macavicki ahead of de Moustier, and from the third row of the grid the two Mercedes had now moved themselves up into third and fourth positions. Everyone filtered around the second corner neatly, but there was disaster later on in the lap for Thomas Enger. He lost his rear splitter. Matteo Cressoni used the Ford GT's power to get past Stéphane Ortelli, but there was a spin for Michael Bartels in the number 18 BMW. He was struggling with his gearbox, which pitched him round at the second corner. The straight line speed of the Porsche was once again coming to their advantage. Matt Halliday getting past Stéphane Ortelli on the run down into the first corner to make up another position. Ortelli would try to fight back, but wasn't quite close enough, whilst the Ford GT up in front, Matteo Cressoni, ran into problems and he was forced to retire from the race. First to pit was Marc Basseng in his Alinkel Mercedes. He would hand over to Marcus Vingelhock, the Alinkel squad doing a good job of getting the car turned around quickly. And on the next lap, Grégoire de Moustier came in to hand over to Alvaro Parent at the same time as the 37 Mercedes. It was a straight fight in the pit stop, and a fight that was won by the Alinkel.com Munich Motorsport squad. Parent left the pit garage, but not before the 37 car had been released, and as a result they managed to leapfrog. In fact, both of the Mercedes leapfrogging Alvaro Parent, moving up into second and third positions. Marc Basseng absolutely delighted with his team's pit work. In came the race leader, Steph Dusseldorp, taking over from Fred Macavicki. Macavicki had built up a massive lead at the front, but a slight pit stop problem meant they emerged with not quite the margin they would have wanted, but nevertheless, Dusseldorp was still in the lead of the race. Parent was now on a charge, trying to get past Nicky Meyer-Melnhof in the BMW and move up into fourth position. He managed to squeeze up the inside up into turn 6, and his sights would then be set on the Mercedes in front of him. Again, the straight line speed of Mike Parisi was causing concerns in the rest of the pack. He managed to get up the inside, past Laurence Vanthor. Vanthor held it on around the outside, but then at turn 3, got out of shape, allowing Parisi to slide back past up the inside. Vanthor just about managed to get back onto the circuit in front of Enzo Ede before the Ferrari could pounce as well. A bit of team play saw Hjalmar Berman get past Nicky Meyer-Melnhof to move the leading BMW up into 5th position, with right behind them Daryl O'Young in the Lamborghini. The battle between Vanthor and Parisi ended in tears as Parisi was tapped into a spin down at turn 11. He would continue to finish, but the race winners from last time out at Zolder would finish a lot lower down the order this time. Instead, the championship race will be won by Steph Dusseldorp and Fred Macavicki. There was very little pressure from behind, and Dusseldorp crossed the line to see Macavicki hanging out of the pit wall to take Hexis Racing's first win of the 2012 season and the first win in international motorsport for the McLaren MP4 12C. It will be second and third places for the two Alinkel Mercedes, Marcus Vingelhock and Thomas Jaeger, holding off pressure from Alvaro Parent behind to finish in second and third positions, much to Marc Basseng, the team manager's delight. A 12-second winning margin for Dusseldorp even with the problem at the pit stop, showed that the Mercedes had no answer for the McLarens this weekend.
Yeah, we had again a really good day. Fred did a perfect start and he managed to make a nice gap. It's good he had a nice gap because we had some troubles in the pit stop. Engine is really hard to start in this condition, so yeah, it took some more time, but luckily the gap was big enough to maintain the lead, and then it was just push a few laps and control the race.
After not scoring any points in the opening round of the season and only finishing 5th in Zolder, it was great to see Makovic and Dusseldorp on the top step of the podium after completing a perfect weekend. The result would also move Dusseldorp and Makovic to the top of the championship, tied on points with Thomas Jaeger and Nicky Pastorelli heading to Slovakia. The 4th round of the season saw the GT1 World Championship head to the Slovakia ring, just outside of Bratislava. Mark Basseng and Marcus Winkelhock had a decent start to the season, but Winkelhock knew there was more work needed if they were going to be true championship challengers.
We are quite, I think, 5th in the championship. Everything's really close in the moment. So our main target is to score as many points as possible. I think it's not going to be easy this weekend for us because of the long straights, but we will do our best.
Philippe Salaquada would start the race from pole position, with Thomas Enger alongside him on the front row, Marcus Winkelhock and Jelmer Berman on row 2. As the lights went green, it was a great start from Matt Halliday in the Porsche, trying to slice through into 2nd position, but as Salaquada took the lead, it was the best start of all from Milos Pavlovic in the Ford GT, holding it up the inside to move up into 3rd place, as around the outside into 2nd position went Marcus Winkelhock. The cars headed up the hill and filtered down into single file through turn 2, with Winkelhock in 2nd place, the Ford GT in 3rd, Thomas Enger dropping from 2nd down to 4th. There was contact though between Enger and Pavlovic at turn 4, the two of them coming together and both of them ending their races on only the 2nd lap of the race. Fred Makovic was now challenging Marcus Winkelhock for 2nd position. He looked to the outside into turn 1 and got the cutback manoeuvre into 2 to move up into that 2nd place. The McLaren was one of the fastest cars this weekend, but they'd struggled in the qualifying race. Makovic now showing the true pace. There were great battles further back in the pack as well, as Enzo Eid tried to make it 3 abreast on the run down into turn 1, but local man Stefan Rosina managed to hold it on around the outside in the 25 Reiter Engineering Lamborghini to get past both of his challengers. Ortelli thought he might have the inside line going down into turn 2, but the very fast right-hander meant there was no way for him to outbrake Enzo Eid. The challenge was now on for 1st place. The number 1 Hexis Racing McLaren of Fred Makovic squeezing up the inside of Philippe Salaquada to take the lead of the race away from the AF Corsa Ferrari. Berman and Winkelhock were also battling over 3rd position, but Stef Dusseldorp was delighted that his teammate had moved them into the lead. The two Audis were doing battle once more, coming down into the 1st corner, this time Stefan Ortelli losing out to the 33 Audi of Frank Stippler. Stippler fighting his way up the order after dropping back in the opening stints. He would hand over to Oliver Jarvis when the pit stop windows came. The race leaders came into the pits, Fred Makovic handing over to Stef Dusseldorp. It was going to be a battle between them and the 18 V1 Racing Team BMW of Jelmer Berman and Michael Bartels. That car was still out on the circuit and will be pitting at the end of the next lap. But as the McLaren tried to leave, the Porsche was coming into its pit slot, meaning that the McLaren had to hold fire, losing valuable seconds. When the BMW came in, they needed a slick pit stop to try and get out in front of the McLaren. Jelmer Berman handing over to team boss Michael Bartels. The V1 team did a great job, and the number 1 Hexis McLaren was still coming around the final corner when the 18 car was released. Bartels inheriting the lead of the race with the number 1 McLaren only just coming around the final corner. The time lost in the pit stop was crucial, and the number 1 McLaren of Fred Makovic and Stef Dusseldorp would end up in 2nd place, much to the delight of the V1 Racing Team. Things weren't going quite as smoothly though for the 2nd BMW. Nicky Mermanov coming under increasing pressure from the 2 WRT Audis. On the run down into the 1st corner, Oliver Jarvis looked to the outside to try and attack the Austrian. Mermanov held his braking on the inside line, which allowed Jarvis to get the cutback out of turn 1 and make the move stick for 5th place up into turn 2. Laurens Vanthoor would soon try and follow suit. He wasn't quite close enough on this lap, but coming out of the final corner, Mermanov went wide, allowing Vanthoor to get a good run. The Belgian driver getting alongside on the outside through the final left-hand kink, but he was pushed out onto the grass, just about holding it. But his opinions on the move were clear to see. But it was the first championship race win of the season for Michael Bartels and Jelmer Berman. Bartels, the 2010 GT1 World Champion, taking the victory, much to the delight of his team, with a strong second position for Fred Makovicky and Stef Dusseldorp. Third place going the way of Marcus Vingelhock and Mark Basseng. But Berman and Bartels delighted. At the end of the race, there were 5 brands in the top 5 positions, but it was Jelmer Berman and Michael Bartels who took the win, and we can hear now from Jelmer Berman.
It was a good race yesterday. I mean, on the podium's always good. We had a little problem in the end, but and then to come back like this again on the next day, you know, to win, it's amazing. It's really good.
And so the top 3 on the podium became the top 3 in the championship. Mark Basseng and Marcus Vingelhock's third place, moving them up 2 positions, their second podium of the season. A win last time out in Spain couldn't be matched this time by Makovicky and Dusseldorp. They picked up second place. But the first win of the season, and the new championship leaders, Michael Bartels and Jelmer Berman, held their trophies aloft, and they look forward to taking their championship lead to the next round in Portugal. The 5th round of the 2012 World Championship saw the teams head to the Algarve circuit in Portugal. One of the best circuits on the calendar. It really was all set to be an exciting race. Second place on the grid would be Jelmer Berman, starting the number 18 Vita4One racing team car, but on pole position after winning the qualifying race on Saturday, Mark Basseng. When the lights went out, it was a good start from Basseng. He managed to hold on to his lead. There was a Ferrari pushed onto the grass towards the back of the field. Coming down into the first corner, it all got a little bit tight, and the Ferrari that was on the grass was now spun sideways after coming together with Grégoire de Moustier and Frank Stippler. Up into second position had gone the number 1 Hexus McLaren. Fred Makovicky making a good start, but there you can see the damage caused to Frank Stippler's rear right tyre. Grégoire de Moustier was able to continue though, but let's see exactly what happened at the start. There was a little bit of contact there, but the main hit comes when de Moustier goes into the side of the number 3 Ferrari of Philander. That takes Stippler out as well. Stippler retired with a broken rear right suspension. Also out of the race was Tony Philander in the Ferrari. But the battles were going on for the lead of the race. Mark Basseng having to defend very strongly from Fred Makovicky, with Jelmer Berman also in attendance. The 3 cars right together for the lead of the race. When the pit stop window opened, Mark Basseng and Jelmer Berman came into the pits at the same time. It was going to be a straight battle between the BMW and the Mercedes squad. Michael Bartels took over from Jelmer Berman, but their stop wasn't quick enough to get them out in front of Vingelhock, who'd now taken over from Basseng. But Thomas Jaeger had pitted a lap earlier, and as a result his slick tyres were up to temperature, and he challenged Marcus Vingelhock going down into turn 3. Vingelhock covered the move off just about, but the 2 Mercedes scrapping ultimately cost them time. Again Jaeger would try going down into the hairpin and then further around the lap, but their battling really cost them, because out of the pits came Stef Dusseldorp in the Hexus McLaren in the lead of the race. A thrilling scrap for the lead then followed, including a bit of 3 abreast action going down into the hairpin. Jaeger sent it to the outside, but ultimately Stef Dusseldorp just about held on in the lead of the race, ahead of Vingelhock and Jaeger, with Michael Bartels closing in quickly in 4th position. The 2 Mercedes then swapped positions, Jaeger managing to get around the outside of Marcus Vingelhock and move up into 2nd place, and ultimately the German driver would have a little bit more luck getting past Dusseldorp. He sent it to the outside into the hairpin, got the better run out of the corner, pulled alongside into turn 8 and took the lead of the race. The Hexus McLaren dropping down to 2nd position, and the disappointment in the Hexus garage was clear to see. It was then Vingelhock's challenge to try and get past the Hexus. He used exactly the same manoeuvre as his teammate Jaeger to force his nose up the inside coming into turn 7 to make it an Allianz Munich Motorsports 1-2. A lot of their progress had been made during the pit stops. Team manager Mark Basseng was happy with that. There was a retirement for Alvaro Parent in the number 2 Hexus McLaren, and there was a little bit of contact further back in the field. Nicky Meyer-Melnoff just tapping the back of Laurens Vanthoor, sending the Audi round. But it was the race win and the 1-2 for Thomas Jaeger and Nicky Pastorelli. 2nd place for Marcus Vingelhock and Mark Basseng, with on the line 4th position being taken by Peter Cox in the Lamborghini. But Thomas Jaeger was delighted, he and Nicky Pastorelli taking their first win of the season. They managed to hold off their Al-Ankle teammates by just 1.5 seconds, with the McLaren a further 5 seconds down the road.
I'm really excited because it was such a tough fight we've seen after the pit stop. So our car was fantastic, that's why I could overtake the other twos. So yeah, my teammate Nicky made a great job. The car was excellent, as I said, very consistent. So it's a great first win with the SLS AMG in the GT1 World Championship, so we are all very happy.
Third place for Steph Dusseldorp and Fred Makovicky saw them claim their third podium in a row. Second place for Marcus Winkelhock and Marc Basseng. Winkelhock particularly displeased with that second place, having led the race early on and getting passed by his teammate Thomas Jaeger. But the win for Jaeger and Pastorelli kept them very much in title contention and also helped Al-Ankle in terms of the team's championship. The Portuguese circuit had provided some of the best racing of the season, with all the top three going side by side down into the hairpin at one point. And here's a look at how it affected the championship standings. Bartels and Berman still on top, but Basseng and Winkelhock only 5 points behind, equally only 1 point clear of Steph Dusseldorp and Fred Makovicky. As far as the team's championship was concerned, though, Munich Motorsports were beginning to pull away at the front from Vita1 Racing Team in second. For the second time in the 2012 season, the GT1 World Championship headed to the Slovakia ring. And after winning the first round here in June, Jelmer Berman was confident of more success in the Vita1 Racing Team BMW.
It was the best weekend we've had the whole season here, so I was happy to come back here, and it's also a nice track, you know, it's fun, it's quite tight, but fun to race. And I mean, we're in quite good shape, so hopefully we can you know, stay at least in the lead of the championship and get a good result.
In qualifying, Albert von Taxis had a massive off in his Reiter Engineering Lamborghini, careering backwards into the tyre barriers on the exit of turn 2. The car was so badly damaged that Reiter Engineering had to ship another one out from their German base 400 kilometres away. They'd have to start, though, from the back of the grid. When the lights went green, the two Vita1 Racing Team BMWs headed down into the first corner in first and second position. The car to watch out for, though, was Peter Cox in the white Reiter Engineering Lamborghini, sending one around the outside at the first corner, almost moving up into second position. There was disaster, though, for the number 1 Hex's McLaren. Fred Makovicky knocked into a spin, Philippe Dumas unimpressed. But up into second place, ultimately, had gone Marc Basseng, with Peter Cox in third and Nicky Mermanov in fourth place. It was all over, though, for Fred Makovicky. The car was too badly damaged and he lost control coming through the tyre chicane, skidding over the top of the hill. Philippe Dumas, from looking unimpressed, then looked furious. Makovicky brought it back to the pits, but it was game over. Jelmer Berman began to pull away up front. There was a challenge on further back as Nicky Pastorelli tried to get past Andreas Zuber in the Sunred Racing 4 GT, and there was disappointment for Albert von Taxis as he had to pull off with mechanical problems. The battle was on for second place. Nicky Mermanov all over the back of Marc Basseng, trying to force his way through into the tight and twisty middle sector. He saw the gap, he pushed the gap open, and Marc Basseng could do nothing to stop Mermanov moving up into second position. Stefano Telli then tried to attack around the outside. Basseng didn't see the Monegasque driver there and almost pushed him out onto the grass. Ortelli then got the cutback on the run-up into turn 9. Basseng tried to close the door, but Ortelli moved through to take third position. There was also a battle on between the second Audi and the second Mercedes. Frank Stippler, trying to get up the inside of the 37 machine of Nicky Pastorelli into turn 1, ultimately made the move stick on the exit of 1 and on the run-up into 2. There was a little bit of contact between the pair of them, but ultimately Stippler made the move stick. Enzo Eid had to retire from the race with a front right puncture, which did irreparable damage to the wheel. Then the pit stop window opened. The first man to come in was the 17 car of Nicky Mermanov. He handed over to Matthias Lauda in the 17 Vita1 Racing Team BMW. Then into the pits came Marc Basseng to hand over to Marcus Winkelhock, with Oliver Jarvis taking over from Frank Stippler in the 33 Audi. Out of the pits came Winkelhock behind Matthias Lauda, ultimately dropping them down into third position. The battle for the lead, though, was on between the two Vita1 Racing Team cars. Jelmer Berman handing over to Michael Bartels, while Matthias Lauda was out on circuit, setting some impressive lap times. The 18 Vita1 Racing BMW got away well, ultimately came out just ahead of his teammate, making it a V for 1-1-2. There were troubles in the pit stops for the 32 Belgian Audi club of Stéphane Ortelli and Laurens Vanthoor. They came out, thanks to that slower pit stop, just behind in 4th position. Oliver Jarvis then tried to find his way past Philippe Salaquada, sending one up the inside into turn 8. He managed to make the move stick, and that would send him up into 4th position. There's a bit of debris on the exit of the chicane. That was after the number 2 Hexis Racing McLaren of Alvaro Parent had run wide, tore the whole of the rear splitter off the car, and that, as a result, brought out the safety car. It was a relatively short safety car period, whilst the marshals ran onto the track and removed the debris. When racing resumed, there was only 1 lap remaining, and the second place BMW of Matthias Lauda was caught napping. Marcus Winkelhock right up behind him on the run down into the first corner. Lauda knew it, went very defensive, and it looked as though Winkelhock was going to go to the outside to then try and get the cutback, but he was super late on the brakes and managed to pass Lauda around the outside of the first corner. With only 1 lap though to hunt down the winners, he could do nothing about stopping Michael Bartels and Hjalmar Berman, who took their second win of the 2012 season. Hjalmar Berman delighted on the pit wall. There was only 0.3 of a second separating first and second places in the end, but ultimately Michael Bartels and Hjalmar Berman came out on top. Let's hear from Bartels.
Of course, I'm very happy. We have the maximum points for this weekend, double win. Of course, it was a shame to see in the mirror that we lost second place. So anyway, we are happy. We did a good job. We had trouble in the pit stops with my mistake, so I have to defend the lead. So, but it was a great race.
So a 3rd place and a first podium of the season for Matthias Lauda and Niki Meyer-Melnhof. They were satisfied despite losing that 2nd place at the start of the last lap. Marc Basseng and Marcus Winkelhock, though, were over the moon. A brilliant move from Marcus Winkelhock to move up into 2nd place. Points that could be crucial in the remainder of the season. But on the top step of the podium and still on top of the championship, Hjalmar Berman and Michael Bartels. Their closest rivals, though, Basseng and Winkelhock, were following them very closely as the series moved to Russia. GT1 became the first FIA World Championship to visit Russia, with an event at the new Moscow Raceway hosting the 7th round of the season. Laurens Vanthoor was hoping that the Audi could get back on track.
After Nogaro we had a difficult time, and in Slovakia we were getting back on the pace, but where we unfortunately made some errors which cost us a good result. So yeah, let's hope that we have the same pace in Slovakia, maybe a little bit better, and go back to the podium.
Wet conditions meant that the race was started behind the safety car, with Stéphane Ortelli on pole position ahead of Marc Basseng in the Alinkel.com Munich Motorsports car. Coming down into the final corner then, Ortelli took the race start once the safety car had peeled in. Basseng in 2nd with his teammate Frank Stippler in 3rd position. There were problems for Matthias Lauda straight away. The BMW shooting off at the final corner. They were having issues with their brakes. Unable to get it stopped at the first corner though was Stéphane Ortelli, and he lost the lead to the Mercedes. Stippler had made it up into 3rd place as all of them scrabbled for grip through the first few corners. There was also an impressive start for Fred Makavicki as he tried to get past the Audis as well, but the Mercedes up front sliding around a lot. Alvaro Parent was on a mission. He managed to get around the outside of Frank Stippler going down towards the final corner. As the Mercedes began to pull away, you can see the challenge on for 2nd place. Fred Makavicki moving up into that 2nd place with Alvaro Parent, his teammate, not far behind, and Tony Villander going past Nicky Pastorelli into the final corner to move up into 6th position. Again, Stéphane Ortelli ran wide at the first corner, this time allowing his teammate through as the McLarens were up into 2nd and 3rd places. Stippler and Ortelli going side by side around the first corner, Stippler holding on to the position though. And then Tony Villander followed through as well, Ortelli dropping down the field after starting on pole position. The two McLarens were then battling, Alvaro Parent trying hard to get past Fred Makavicki and move up into 2nd place. The two Hexis machines really providing some great entertainment, and he made the move stick into 2nd position. It wasn't long before he was challenging for the race lead, up the hill into turn 9, later on the brakes than the Mercedes, and Alvaro Parent completed a very impressive drive to move into the lead of the race. Then the pit stop window came. The number 1 Hexis McLaren was the first car to pit, and he managed to come out comfortably ahead of the 38 Mercedes, and then in came Alvaro Parent to hand over to Grégoire de Moustier. De Moustier taking over from Parent, but that allowed Stef Dusseldorp to come out just behind de Moustier. When they came out of the pits, the number 1 McLaren was still coming down the start-finish straight. The 2 Alincourt Mercedes then got battling with each other, ultimately costing them time as Philippe Salaquada came through on the inside to pass the 38 car. And then the move for the lead came. Stef Dusseldorp had been closing in on Grégoire de Moustier. De Moustier missed his braking point going into the final corner. The 2 Hexis McLarens going side by side down the start-finish straight, but Stef Dusseldorp was up into the lead of the race. There were still scores to be settled further down the field. The Audis, after having a poor opening stint, were starting to find a little bit more pace. Oliver Jarvis sweeping past the 38 car of Marcus Winkelhock, with his teammate Laurence Vanthor attempting to follow suit. Winkelhock having a little touch on the back there of Jarvis, but he managed to make it stick. Philippe Salaquada was now challenging Grégoire de Moustier for second position. The Ferrari having a look up the inside into turn 6, but the over-ambitious manoeuvre pushed Grégoire de Moustier into a spin. The Hexis team very disappointed with that manoeuvre from the Ferrari. Fred Macavicki immediately walking out to the pit wall. Here's a look at it again. De Moustier seemed to have the corner, and he was sent spinning by Philippe Salaquada. Salaquada, though, couldn't continue. There was too much damage to his AF Corsa Ferrari from the incident. And then his teammate Enzo Ede decided to spin Nicky Pastorelli as well. That Ferrari getting a time penalty. But the race win went to Stef Dusseldorp and Fred Macavicki as they crossed the line to take their second win of the 2012 season. Stef Dusseldorp absolutely delighted with that, as were the team, who picked up their first 1-2 of the year. It was also a strong result for WRT Audi, finishing in 3rd and 4th places, their best weekend since the opening round in Nogaro, but Fred Macavicki took the victory.
It's really great for us, especially after the race of Slovakia. We're coming back for the championship, and it was a really hard condition, especially with the tire. It was difficult to find a good pressure, and sometimes we can be really fast, sometimes we are really slow, and the window is really close, she really little, and we must work on this, but really thank you McLaren and Hexis, they did a great job.
So an excellent 3rd place for Oliver Jarvis and Frank Stippler, marking their first return to the podium since the opening round of the season. De Moustier and Alvaro Parent drove strongly to finish 2nd, but Stef Dusseldorp and Fred Macavicki took their 2nd win of the season to move themselves into title contention. Here you can see they are now 3rd place in the drivers' standings, but only 17 points off Michael Bartels and Hjalmar Berman, with only 2 rounds remaining. As far as the team's championship is concerned, Alinkel.com Munich Motorsports continue to lead, heading to their home race in Germany. The 8th round of the season took place in Germany at the famous Nürburgring circuit. And as the season was beginning to draw to a close, it looked like it was going to be a title battle between BMW and Mercedes, a prospect that Michael Bartels was looking forward to.
I think it will be a good German fight on one of the most famous trucks in the world, of course in Germany. It's not only a German driver battle, it's also a German brand battle, and I hope we are in the end in front of them.
Peter Cox led the way on the start, with Laurence Vanthor in the 32 Audi challenging. The GT1 grid was also joined by the GT3 grid for this event. On the run down into the first corner, though, Peter Cox comfortably held the advantage. Moving up into 2nd place was Marc Basseng with a rather forceful manoeuvre, but in the end Tony Verlander was also challenging for that 2nd position as well. There was contact at turn 2. Nicky Pastorelli, Oliver Jarvis and Grégoire de Moustier all coming together and all eliminating themselves from the race. It was huge disappointment for Jarvis, who'd shown good pace over the course of the weekend. Jarvis's teammate Laurence Vanthor was now coming under pressure from Hjalmar Berman. Berman got the inside line going down into turn 3 and managed to take the position away from the Audi. Just as the Hexis boss was heading up to ask the Heiko team to move their car out of the way, Fred Macavicki did it for them, punting the Mercedes into a spin and sending them back down the field in GT3. That would earn the Hexis McLaren team a drive-through penalty and effectively end their championship hopes. Philippe Dumas unimpressed with how things had transpired. Fred Macavicki had not been told of his drive-through penalty yet, so he was still attacking Hjalmar Berman going down into the first corner. desperate to get his McLaren up into third position. A retirement on the qualifying race meant that McLaren were really playing catch-up in terms of the championship battle, but Makovic almost forced his way through, and then did force his way through into turn 3. Then the pit stops came, and the 3 championship challengers came into the pits at the same time. Winkelhock waiting to take over from Basseng, as Dusseldorp took over from Makovic, and Bartels took over from Berman. At the pit stops where Al Inkel had been so strong all season, they continued that form. But it was the AF Corsa squad who did the best pit stop, Philippe Salaquada getting past all of them and coming out in the lead of the race, after the previous race-leading Lamborghini of Peter Cox had trouble in the pit stop, bringing Stefan Rosina out on the right-hand side here, behind both the Mercedes and the BMW. It was a slow stop for the Hex's McLaren crew, and Stef Dusseldorp lost out to the Lamborghini going down into the first corner. But Rosina had his tyres up to temperature, and he was soon on the attack, trying to get past Michael Bartels. He got a great run out of 2 and sent it up the inside into turn 3 to move up into third position. Bartels tried to fight back, there was a little bit of contact, but Rosina had made the move stick. A great battle for second position then began. Stefan Rosina attacking Marcus Winkelhock hard, and despite having a championship to think about, Winkelhock was going to defend every position he possibly could. Rosina sold him the dummy coming into the chicane, and the two of them went door handle to door handle through the quick left-right. Winkelhock just holding on ahead of Rosina. In came Stef Dusseldorp in the McLaren to serve his drive-through penalty that Fred Makovic had picked up earlier on. But it wasn't the drive-through penalty that did the most damage, it was the retirement with electrical problems a few laps later that effectively put an end to Dusseldorp and Makovic's title assault. Makovic looking disappointed on the pit wall as the McLaren was towed away. But it was going to be the first championship race win of the season for AF Corsa Ferrari. They'd had the pace the whole year, but hadn't quite been able to turn it into results. Philippe Salaquada crossing the line to win for him and Tony Verlander. Second place going the way of Marc Basseng and Marcus Winkelhock, with Peter Cox and Stefan Rosina in third. It was a 6.5 second winning margin in the end, with the BMWs coming in 4th and 5th. But let's hear from our race winner, Philippe Salaquada.
It's a great win. I want to thank you all the team and Tony. He had a great start, which I was really impressed. He made a P2, and then during the pit stop we make up to P1. So for me it was just I saw the car behind me very far, but I had to keep my pace. But the car was working very well, and I could stay in my pace and do good lap times, and we can stay in P1. I'm very happy, very happy.
So third place for Peter Cox and Stefan Rosina, the first podium of the season for those two and for the Reiter Engineering Lamborghini squad. Second place for Marc Basseng and Marcus Winkelhock, a result which really tightens up the championship going into the final round at Donington. It was the top step of the podium for Tony Verlander and Philippe Salaquada. For the first time this season, AF Corsa and Ferrari taking the win in FIA GT1. But the championship was now very tight going to the final round of the 2012 season in the UK. Coming to Donington Park for the final round of the 2012 championship, 3 driver pairings were in the hunt to win the title. That was coming into Saturday anyway. After the qualifying race, the 1 point picked up by Marc Basseng and Marcus Winkelhock eliminated Stef Dusseldorp and Fred Makovic from the title hunt. As far as the team's championship was concerned, a decent weekend from Al Inkel was all they needed to wrap it up. Berman and Bartels are the men doing the chasing this weekend. Let's hear Jelmer's thoughts.
Well, it was a really good battle, you know, so far, and I mean, to be here in this position is really cool. It's going to be for sure tough, but I think we've got a really good chance, and we're going to push as hard as we can.
Winkelhock and Basseng are leading the championship, and Basseng knows consistency is key.
We know from the beginning we have a good car, a car which will run every weekend. And Marcus and me, we are always out of the trouble. So in the end we make the points, and now we are here leading by 1 point, and I hope this is enough for the championship.
Fred Makovic had pole position at the start of the final race of the season. Marc Basseng was looking racy early on, but the best start of all was made by Peter Cox, looking towards the inside line going down into Redgate. He managed to move up into second position. But towards the back of the field, Nicky Mounthoff ran wide, came back onto the circuit, collected Laurent Groppi, and the two of them were off. Both drivers were unharmed, but it brought an end to the team's championship, with the Vitavorn Racing team now unable to score enough points to overhaul Alinkel. The Alinkel squad were doing battle, Alvaro Parent getting past Marc Basseng on the run-up through the left-hander at Schwanzkurve up towards Koppis. Unsurprisingly though, the safety car was brought out at the end of that first lap after what was a very high-speed impact. The marshals had so much work to do rebuilding the wall and the tyre barriers that the race was red flagged for a short period whilst they cleared up the wreckage on the exit of Hollywood. Laurent Groppi and Nicky Mermelnov though, both okay. The red flag was brought in, the race restarted behind the safety car, and Alvaro Parent immediately attacked Thomas Jaeger. Jaeger in the Mercedes missed his braking point for the Fogarty S's, which allowed his teammate Marc Basseng to get alongside. Enzo Ede, though, in the Ferrari, saw an opportunity and dived up the inside of both of the Mercedes coming down into the Melbourne hairpin. Also trying to take advantage was the 33 car of Oliver Jarvis. He slotted in between the two Mercedes as well in a good move for the Audi. Jaeger immediately tried to fight back, but it wasn't quite enough, and he had his championship rival Michael Bartels all over the back of him. Oliver Jarvis then made the move on Marc Basseng, dropping the championship leader down another position. Alvaro Parent made the move on Laurens Vanthoor coming up into Koppis and soon set his sights on closing down Stefan Rosina up in front in the Lamborghini. Then the pit stop window opened. In first was Michael Bartels to hand over to Jelmer Berman, but Berman got caught out behind Frank Stippler on the way out of the pits. A brave move around the outside at the Schwanzkurve moved Berman up past the Audi, and his tyres were already up to temperature when the 38 car came in. Markus Winkelhock taking over from Marc Basseng. The Alinkel squad doing a good pit stop as ever to get the Mercedes out in front of the BMW. But Berman had the heat in the rear tyres, and that was going to be a crucial factor. There you can see the advantage that Winkelhock had, but on a cold British day, it was all about getting your tyres up to temperature, and before long Berman was on the back of Winkelhock on the run down into Redgate. He looked to the outside, but there was no room, but he managed to get the cutback coming out and have the inside line into Hollywood. There was contact between the two of them, and Berman was off. Both of the championship protagonists out of the race. Michael Bartels was furious. With both cars retiring, it meant that Winkelhock and Basseng were the 2012 Drivers' World Champions. But Michael Bartels was not happy with the way things had ended. Here's a look at the replay, the two of them making contact just on the exit of the corner. Winkelhock then claimed something broke on his car, which sent the Mercedes spearing out of control, and a heavy backwards impact for Jelmer Berman. He stayed in the car for a while as a precautionary measure, but he was okay. The safety car was brought out with Fred Makovicky and Stef Dusseldorp leading the way, but the damage was so great to the wall that the red flag was called. The race win then was given to the Hexus McLaren of Fred Makovicky and Stef Dusseldorp, their third win of the season, which delighted Dusseldorp.
Yeah, it's an amazing year. We started really badly in the first race in Nogaro, and it's a great way to finish the season with a win. It's definitely not the win we wanted to have today. It's not a good sign to see two cars in the wall, but I'm happy we got the win. We did our best anyway. We were the best yesterday. We were the best today, I think, as well. So we deserve the win, but not the way we want.
Alvaro Parent and Gregoire de Moustier picked up their second podium finish of the season. They were very satisfied with that. Second place going the way of Peter Cox and Stefan Rosina, their second podium in as many races. And it was the race win for Fred Makovicky and Stef Dusseldorp. But now let's hear from the teams and drivers champion of 2012, Marc Basseng.
This was a tough weekend, really stressful. I'm unhappy how it ends, definitely, with the collision between Jelmer and Markus. But I just had two short replays on TV, and what I saw is that Jelmer hit Markus first, and Markus reported to us that maybe something broke or his car gets unstable after the first hit, and then the second hit happened, which Jelmer turns around and put him into the tire wall. So I think it is their investigation at the stewards, and they will find out. But in my eyes, this was unnecessary from Jelmer to push Markus because he had so much grip. He could easily do the inside or take the inside line. So not good to end the championship like that.
At the end of the 2012 season, the top 3 driver pairings were separated by just 1 point, Basseng and Winkelhock taking the 2012 crown ahead of Dusseldorp and Makovicky. As far as the team's championship was concerned, Alinkel wrapped that up earlier on in the day, but Hexis Racing moved up into second place with that final victory. So a season of spectacular racing saw the Mercedes SLS AMGs dominate, Alinkel taking both the teams and the Drivers' World Championship.